Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey Misbrenner, Managing Editor with Solar Power World, and I'm here today with Carson Hargrader. She is the CEO of Carolina Solar Energy, which is based in Durham, North Carolina. So welcome, Carson.
Thank you.
Carolina Solar Energy, your team is developing projects in 3 states, North Carolina, Virginia, and Kentucky. Can you tell me why those 3 states?
So Carolina Solar Energy was founded here in North Carolina by my father, and he started the company back in the early 2000s and was part of a small group of people that helped North Carolina pass legislation that was the first renewable energy portfolio standard in the Southeast. The company was born and bred here. Most of our projects that we developed are located here. And we sort of spread from North Carolina, first up into Virginia, and then about 3 years ago over into Kentucky. In these regulated markets, you have to be so in touch with the legislatures and the utilities commissions in the states where you're operating. It really takes a lot of time and resources. Whereas by moving up into Virginia and Kentucky, the areas that we went into in those states are covered by the PJM interconnection region. And so we get a lot of coverage in PJM because the ISO, PJM, sets a lot of the rules that regulate how we operate. And then, of course, the projects are able to sell their power freely into the market.
Tell me about your path to solar. I know that your dad started this company, but what were your interests before joining the company?
Yeah, so I actually started out my career out of college in international development, and I was looking at developing countries and how to help them get on a path to democracy and better ways of life, and got into the industry from the ground up. I was an office manager at a renewable energy company over in Australia, and then from there joined GE Wind Energy and was at GE Wind for 8 years. And in the meantime, my dad was starting this solar company in North Carolina and sort of said from time to time, hey, you could come home, you could work with me. And I eventually decided to do that. And that was what really got me into solar. And it's been interesting, the wind energy business in the US has obviously continued to flourish, but it's been really exciting to join a new area of renewable energy. I'm very passionate about renewables in general. Yeah, fully versed in solar. So I think that's probably where I'll be for the foreseeable future.
Wow, that is quite a journey, and what an amazing experience just out of college. What has been the most rewarding moment of your career with Carolina Solar Energy so far?
I worked on a project back in 2016. We had a 50 megawatt project in eastern North Carolina. It was in what's called the extraterritorial jurisdiction of a very small town called Grifton. And we needed to get our permit to have the project be able to move forward. And we had some pretty staunch local opposition. There was a real estate appraiser who was very concerned about the value of his home and the homes in his neighborhood. And we really had to take a lot of time with that project, working with the mayor, working with the city council, talking about the benefits of the project to the town. And we were able to show that if the town annexed this project, this small town that had really been on hard times was going to make over 30 years, I think it was a little over $1 million in increased property tax revenue. The county was going to get a little bit more than that. So combined, it was going to be over $2 million for the regional area. And it was a really amazing experience for me. I mean, we had city council meetings where there were, 100 people there to oppose our project, very upset and concerned. And by, bringing in our expert witness, talking about what the project was going to be, sharing photos, sharing images, we were able to slowly explain to people, the very low impact that the solar project was going to have. We proposed some pretty big setbacks from the neighborhood that was most concerned. And then the neighbors on the other side of the project actually said, we really want this project. We love the fact that this area is quiet, and we want it to stay that way. And we'd much rather have the solar project come in than a big residential development or any other, agricultural or other use that could be here. And so we then worked with the town to do some neat projects there and getting that permit, and then being able to go back later on and see the project built It's really, really rewarding being part of these local communities and hearing the mayor now talk about the tax revenue from the project and what it's meant to the town. We get to know the local folks. We get to know our landowners really well. Obviously, we get to know the local restaurants. It's rewarding on so many ways, and really excited to see the project in the ground. Another rewarding moment I would mention, we talked before about how Carolina Solar Energy has some projects in Kentucky, and that was something that one of my staff members came up with. And he suggested Kentucky and said, hey, there's this piece of PJM that's in Kentucky, and I don't know that there's much solar going on there. And we looked closely at it, and the terrain felt a lot like North Carolina. It felt a lot like what we were used to. Had a lot of meetings with local politicians, and obviously, signed up our landowners, and now our projects there are getting ready to go into construction. So, and there's a lot of solar development in Kentucky now. So that was another really rewarding experience of being able to kind of see something before it happens and then get to watch it happen. It's really rewarding.
I'm sure that meant a lot to your colleague who made that suggestion. That's transformative to add another state. I noticed on your website, you have a submission form for people with land that they're looking to perhaps lease to you guys.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about how that process works and if you see a lot of interest on there?
Yeah, we do. Most of the landowners that we sign up are landowners where we have identified a particular location, and then we find ways of getting in contact with them. As most developers will know, the very first thing we do is to look and see what utility service area they're in, what transmission or distribution lines might be close to their property. Or for us, we pretty much require the transmission or distribution line to cross the property itself. And then we let them know, either, this is a utility that we're working with, a service territory that we're working in, and this line is something we want to investigate. And then we go from there and might do either a pre-request with the utility or go to one of our engineers and ask them what they think about this interconnection. And if everything continues positively, we might move forward with the project. We do get a lot of inquiries about residential solar, and we have to just let people know that we don't do that, and the other local companies that we really recommend. 10 years ago, we were mostly doing 5 megawatt projects, and now it's very hard to even just get a 50 megawatt project built. But most of the companies that we sell our projects to really want 80 to 100 plus megawatts as an absolute minimum.
Tell me about the most unique project your company has completed.
We're working on something pretty new. From our work in Kentucky, we got connected with a company that owns land that was formerly a coal mine. And so we spent a lot of time going over the different land that they had and finding the area that was flat enough that had the transmission on it. And we're now in the PJM queue and in the process of developing what will be a former coal to solar site in Kentucky. And we're so excited about that, bringing economic development to areas that really need it, that saw a lot of activity when coal was a bigger resource, and to be able to bring solar there and to help a new community benefit from solar. Yeah, we're all super excited about it.
That's pretty good timing too, with the national political scene right now, where Manchin has decided to endorse a climate bill.
The solar is not going to replace coal on a strict economic basis. For the landowners or the counties that were used to the coal revenues, I think you need solar combined with other things. So I don't want to say it's going to be a complete panacea, but yeah, obviously we're absolutely thrilled with Manchin's decision, and really excited about what that's going to mean for renewables across the country, and hopefully it'll give a boost for some of these projects in Appalachia as well.
What is preventing you from developing more projects?
It's a great question. Physically, the biggest constraint that we face is interconnection, and that falls into a few categories. The best sites for solar are those that don't require big upgrades, and hopefully any upgrades to the transmission grid. So if we can find a project that can use what we term, very non-engineering term, but available capacity on a particular transmission line or distribution line, because all you have to pay for is the actual cost to interconnect, add new hardware to interconnect the project to the grid. You don't have to pay for big grid upgrades. And most of our projects have been those types of projects. And those projects are harder and harder to find as more solar and wind has gone in to the grids. That quote unquote available capacity has been used up. And so that makes projects, more expensive to interconnect because you need to pay for grid upgrades. Those grid upgrades take time. One thing about the bill that Manchin has agreed to, it is unfortunate that transmission was taken out of it, but we definitely see transmission as probably the number one issue preventing more projects. But another thing I think our industry really needs to focus on is the agrovoltaics issue, and how do we show that our projects don't just build a fence around some solar panels and then sort of become cut off from the community. In other words, we know our projects are going to create a lot of tax space. We know they're going to create jobs, especially during construction. But I just don't think going forward that's going to be enough. I think we have to think more and more about how do we combine solar and agriculture? How do we continue to show that we are serious about being parts of the community? I think we're really going to need to show that. I know I actually listened to a former podcast you did with the owner of, or CEO of Green Lantern, and he mentioned he was doing a project with cattle. There are sheep that graze on a bunch of my company's projects. We own a small portfolio of our own projects that have sheep on them, but I think going to the cattle and other crops that these agricultural communities are more used to and really feel that those crops and those animals are part of their community, being able to show that solar is not going to just take that land out of those former uses, I think is incredibly important. NC State University is doing some work on this. A lot of different places are working to figure this out. We have designed pollinators at a lot of our projects. All of our projects in Kentucky have pollinators designed on them. Some of the projects in Virginia do. So I'm hopeful that the industry will move more in that direction, and that will help take away some headwinds against the industry going forward.
This brought to mind recently driving through somewhere very rural, and I saw signs that said no industrial solar. And that definitely just underscores your point that there needs to be much more working together and showing that it's not just panels and a fence and gravel.
It's very hard. Once a neighbor decides they don't want a project, it's very, very hard to change their minds. You kind of see how human psychology works, and that once a mind is made up, it is very hard to change it. And so I think some of that is that just, okay, we don't want this, we don't like this, we've decided that. So what labels are we going to put on it? What things are we going to say about it to convince others to agree with us? But yeah, I agree. The more we can do to counter that narrative with, information about what the project will actually do, I think it really is important. And that's something that our company really tries to specialize in, is the community outreach, the personal approach, and really showing people that you do care about their concerns. I think just being able to talk to people and really listen to their very specific concerns is incredibly important, because people have real questions. This is something that's very new for a lot of these communities, and you don't always win, but we try really hard.
Well, on the more hopeful and forward-thinking note, what are some future product trends that you're looking forward to in the solar industry?
Yeah, great question. We were hearing 6-7 years ago a lot about the duck curve in California, and these concerns about, how are we going to integrate large volumes of solar and wind, and the intermittency issues, and just how are we going to get through this? And I didn't foresee the rise of the batteries, but it's certainly happened over the last, 5 years. It's just incredible how the cost curve has come down. Obviously, we still have some issues to address with batteries, but I'm very hopeful that as more and more solar projects are paired with batteries and there's more standalone storage on the grid, I just hope that this technology will really, really help with the integration of solar, with the cost-effective integration of all forms of renewables, and that the utilities will accept this technology more and more. Regulators will understand it more, and it will just allow us to reach greater penetrations of renewables and ensure that renewables are helping the grid and are able to power the grid when people need it most, which obviously at a fundamental level we have to do.
I think that maybe the last 5 people I've interviewed have said that. So this is
Yeah.
hotly anticipated by everyone.
Yeah. And of course, it's already happening. Every interconnection application that's submitted now is pretty much with battery storage. But I think the rollout, of course, is a little bit behind the interconnection applications. But I think just 2 or 3 years from now, we'll be in an even more, what should I call it, mature technology status.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Carson. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. It was great talking with you.
This has been another edition of Contractor's Corner. Join us each month as I talk to solar contractors across the country. Thanks for listening to the Solar Power World podcast. Visit us online at solarpowerworldonline.com for more great featured content and breaking solar news. See you back here next month.